Thanks, everybody. Hey, good to see you all. I'm not here to give good news, of course. I'm thankful for people that will gather and take this in. The whole world should be hearing this. The whole world should be learning about what's happening in our world. The three existential threats, nuclear annihilation, which we're very, very close to, war itself, as far as destruction of the planet. So we got nuclear, we got war itself, and then we have the climate crisis. To me, it's the question, what's it going to do us in first? The thing about the climate crisis is it's just not waiting for one of these. It's going on every day. It continues, our climate continues to degenerate day by day. Climate crisis isn't one of those things that you're going to wake up and the world is transformed. It's a day by day. I just noticed in my own life I've been aware of climate change since 1992, and I'm aware of it because I'm outside. I walk. I go outside, and I knew that I could tell that our weather was changing just from our winters in Minnesota. They started to get more moderate, and just as it is today, you can set your clock farming-wise with Minnesota's climate. You could set your clock because it was so predictable. Nowadays, just general things like we used to be able to have, October, November, temperature would go down and stay frozen until April, and you have spring thaw. Now you don't know if you're going to have ice for ice fishing. We have refrigerated outdoor skating rinks, and the moisture and the precipitation has changed, and the winds, the winds are more predominant and more forceful. Just simple things, along with all the other stuff. In Minnesota we've had the wettest spring ever and the driest fall ever. And last winter we had like 2 inches of snow. We worst inches of snow that we. So anyhow, just general things like that. Then we have all the hurricanes, and floods, and so that the evidence is there. But anyhow, so I'm glad that you're here to listen. But I'm part of Veterans for Peace Climate Crisis and Militarism Working Project, and we actually began about 3 years ago. And the world has changed a lot since we started. My notes, I have to keep adding notes. I'm not a good writer. It's cut and paste stuff. So I got a whole bunch of information. But they told me I had like 5 minutes to summarize my talk, which usually takes me 45 minutes. So, I'm just going to try to reduce it because I know we're under a time crunch anyhow. So, but first I have a question for you. Consider, if you don't know it already, how many feel that the climate crisis can be solved without ending war? How many feel that the climate crisis can be solved without abolishing war? Well, no, people don't think you can do that? Well, yeah, I seriously doubt that we can do that. And the Veterans for Peace, our primary goal is to abolish war. That's one of our primary missions. It's a lofty goal, but it's something that we work for every day. And addressing the climate crisis is a way to abolish war. This could lead us away from war by simply abolishing war. Because it's one of the biggest contributors. I'm going to go into detail about that. So anyhow, my name is Berry Reich. I've been a member of Veterans for Peace since 1991. After joining in protest of our first invasion of Iraq, that's where I met Captain Kelly way back then. I've had first-hand experience in the military's impact on the environment while participating in its destruction while serving in Vietnam for a year in 69-70. I participated in devastating the countryside with mortar rounds, bird pits, occupying peaceless homelands, garbage dumps filled with hazardous waste, etc. Things which I regret from that point forward. It's something that I have to live with each day. I returned in 1991 after the first Gulf War to do something constructive by building a medical clinic in South Vietnam, close to where I served. And I just have this thing here. The national military is an extraordinarily dangerous thing. There's no more destructive and wasteful practice than preparing for and fomenting war. It is killing the planet. Military in its most abstract sense is a war on the planet simply by virtue of what militarization requires for sustenance. War is the enemy, along with the climate crisis. So what is the enemy? Nothing I want to say. It's easy to get to, one of the reasons why people, I think, don't pay attention as much, even though you don't notice the day-to-day, it's easy to get distracted from the environmental concerns while viewing non-stop coverage of the carnage of Gaza and Africa. Seeing innocent children being slaughtered is heart-wrenching in a way that rising sea levels, storms, drought, and extreme heat-threatening water supplies aren't. However, the devastating effect of these things which threaten life on our planet are just as important as stopping war. Hearing terms like carbon emissions, fossil fuel emissions, carbon footprint, tons of planet-warning emissions, metric tons of carbon dioxide, CO2 equivalent, are important, but they don't pull at the heartstrings like seeing innocent babies wrapped in white sheets or children who have lost their entire family. People's minds are not always shaped by facts alone. I find that the facts boring myself, because I don't know what a ton of whatever, and it's just, but anyhow, but it's important. So what can we do to get the world to be more concerned and pay better attention to the climate crisis? Unfortunately, environmental groups, in particular environmental groups, locally and internationally, for the most part, have neglected to talk about war along with the rising global militarism, have contributed heavily to the climate crisis. We're glad that is beginning to change, and all of us who are hoping to save life on our planet need to work together, which means calling to account all the contributing factors. Stopping war will not solve the whole problem, but it won't be solved without addressing it either. But the point is that most environmental groups don't talk about militarism in regards to, and so that's a lot of our mission. What we try to do is educate environmental groups in particular. We'll talk to anybody, anytime, any place, but we're trying to educate environmental groups in particular to add it into their talks. They're doing great work, but they're missing some important elements. Let's see, two. We have veterans for peace have been aware for years about the impact that the military had on this earth and its contribution to the climate crisis, have been concerned that especially with, I've already covered that. It should come as no surprise that the U.S. military has the largest carbon and greenhouse gas footprint of any organization in the world, larger than that of each of 140 countries. Our wars, which are primarily for oil and other resources, keep in balance the fossil fuel-based status quo, the U.S. military usage, which are primarily for oil, status quo and military usage of those resources. Huge financial resources are poured into the military, basically unquestioned, by members of Congress and Senate. Money for war and military seem to have come from some magical source, different from the limitations we are told apply to programs for people's well-being. Largely, those expenditures are labeled for defense, but the U.S. has not been invaded by a foreign power since the War of 1812. The expenditures go towards, as we've talked about, control of resources, profits of the war industry, support of defense contractors, and fossil fuel interests. So that's primarily what drives our wars, those interests. In the words of David Boyd, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights and the Environment, he says, the immense magnitude of military emissions from preparing for war, carrying out war, and rebuilding after war pushes humanity even closer to the precipice of climate catastrophe, and it's an idiotic way to spend our shrinking carbon footprint. So much of our carbon footprint is in the preparation for war, and then the aftermath, of course. Okay. Our work in the climate crisis group is primarily about emissions. We can't, and they wanted me to talk about environmental impacts more so than the climate crisis, but we can't ignore the environmental impacts. Just to give a short list, we have depleted uranium, Agent Orange. Children to this day are still being born with severe disabilities in Vietnam with the earth and water contamination from Agent Orange. We have chemical and biological weapons that we're using, burn pits, destruction of oil fields, radioactive waste, fires and chemical spraying. The U.S. is the first and only military power to ever use nuclear weapons in combat, depleted uranium. Nuclear testing has also brought about displacement, damage, and death to people in many Pacific islands, as well as the atomic veterans. Speed said that U.S. militarism and our global climate crisis disproportionately affect Black, Indigenous, and people of color, including those of the Global South. Israeli airstrikes have dropped more than 25,000 tons of bombs in Gaza. That is more destructive power than 2 nuclear bombs. The contaminants and heavy metals in those bombs are seeping into Gaza's soil and its already scarce water resources. We basically made a wasteland. Our country, our tax dollars, our bombs have basically made a waste of Gaza. It's in raw. We're talking a wasteland. And even if it's all concrete, in order to clean the place up, they've got to get rid of the concrete. Where are they going to put it? How are they going to haul it? It would have to be rebuilt. Plus, it's leached into the contaminants have leached into the soil, into the water table. They're going to be there forever. We basically, the carbon pollution cost is already astronomical. Carbon emissions in Gaza war. This comes at a time when the planet's weather is already being driven to new, never before experienced extremes. This conflict is exacerbating a lethal process which has already been pushed beyond the point of no return. This conflict also laid waste to the local environment of Gaza. Gaza is and will remain a place of extraordinary misery, certainly for the rest of my life and likely for generations to come. Ceasefire is long overdue. The way I look at it now, there's got to be a complete arms embargo. I think countries that are the UN people are going to start pushing for that now. In our country in particular, we talk ceasefire while we continue to follow more. It's just baloney. It's just baloney. We could have ended this thing months ago. And people are going to continue. In addition, I say that there must be a complete arms embargo from the world. There must be a transnational effort to recover this land and its people as much as possible, to mitigate the hostilities between the Palestinian and Israeli nations, and to dismantle the military and industrial complexes which dominate international relations around the world. So maybe I'll just stop there. There's some other stuff. I have lots of, just maybe some of the more current information. Global temperatures rising. With August 24, we now have 15 months in a row with temperature anomalies higher than any previous month with the same name, respectively. The 12-month running below average global temperature anomalies is now reported in NOAA 1.5 degrees above Celsius, above the 1950. And that's what the threshold that we're trying to not break. But we're already there, so that doomsday clock is already at zero. CO2 concentrations rising. The 12-month running average of CO concentration in the atmosphere has reached 423.43 ppm, up from 423 ppm last month. Money won't protect you from climate change. Billionaire Mike Lynch's 180-foot yacht sank off the coast of Sicily in a freak storm made more likely by climate change, drowning him, his daughter, and his 4 others. This is the first case that I'm aware of the death of a billionaire with climate change as a probable contributing factor. And I'll just start with that. I do have some